Alright, welcome back to B Mother Reviews, everybody, and I have to confess something right off the top of this video, and that is that Robin is my least favorite character of all time, and this stems from when I was a kid, the old 1960s Adam West Batman show, the holy jumpin' G Willikers style of Robin. I just couldn't stand the guy, and it's something that stuck with me my whole life. But today, I'm going to set aside my own personal bias because we're taking a look at this special pre-production sample of the Super Sons from XM Studios. So, are you a Robin fan? What about Superboy here? Is this statue for you? Find out in the preview coming up next. Alright, as we all know, the legend of Batman says that he is prepared for everything, and with the proper amount of prep time, he can defeat anyone. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is in fact not the case. He was not prepared for some sultry curves and a pair of big brown eyes. He is only human after all. He could not resist a little bit of TNA, and that's right, I'm talking about one Talia al Ghul, the exotic beauty, of course, the daughter of one of his enemies, Ra's al Ghul. And the product of their raunchy one-night stand is right here, one young Damian Wayne. Now, in the early parts of his life, when he was raised by his mother, he was taught the lethal ways from the League of Assassins. And when he was around 10 years old, he was finally introduced to his biological father, of course, Bruce Wayne, or Batman. Now, the true Batman fan would probably say this was all part of the plan because Damian has gone on to become the next in a long line of children exploited by Batman, basically used as death fodder by routinely exposing them to mortal danger. That's right, Damian has become the latest Robin. Now, on the flip side of that, we've got young Jonathan Kent, who, of course, you'll recognize that last name, is the firstborn son of one Clark Kent, aka Superman, and his one and only Lois Lane. Now, being the product of true love, he is, of course, pure of heart and a true hero just like his father, Superman. Now, when you put the two of them together, it's kind of like this buddy cop type of scenario. You have the hot-headed, arrogant, highly trained Damian Wayne here versus the, good-natured and well-meaning Jonathan Kent, Superboy, whose good intentions often create more problems for the duo than they solve. But will this statue create more problems than it solves for your collection? Well, let's find out. Let's kick off the preview with Sculpt and Design next. Alright, this statue here is sculpted by the very talented fellow Canadian David Giroux, whose works for XM include Witchblade, the ill-fated Quicksilver that was never produced, the awesome Darth Maul. So he's got a really nice portfolio under his belt already. And when I take a look at this statue, the first thing that comes to mind for me is synergy. I just love how these two characters are playing off one another. They just work together so perfectly. So let's take a look at the base here. You can see the piled up pieces of this very deadly looking robotic mech beneath their feet. You got Superboy here leading the charge in this crater in the armor under his fist. And in true Batman style, you have Robin jumping over his back, arriving with a flourish after all the heavy lifting has already been done. I really love the contrast in look between these two characters. You look at Superboy, and his costume is a pair of Converse-style high tops, a ripped-up pair of jeans, and what looks like a Superman hoodie with a red bedsheet tied around his neck. It's something he could have pulled out of his closet from home. You compare that to Robin, who admittedly is kind of the star of this statue, with his sleek, modern armor. His costume details look awesome. I love the cape. I love the rib texture on the inside. And on the outside, you have this smooth finish to it. He's got the customary Batman utility belt with the superhero pouches lining the outside there. You got his knee-high lace-up boots with some nice texture on the heels and toes, and then the textured knee pads. So both characters look fantastic. But what I like best about this is they look like kids. I have a couple of young boys myself, about the same age as these characters are supposed to be, and they're basically all skin and bone. And I like that these characters kind of have that same scrawny build of a young kid. And you look at Superboy especially, he's got a very young, innocent looking face with a little bit of leftover baby fat on there as well. And even Robin, doing his best to be the badass of this statue, you can still tell is just a small child. So this statue, as I said, the two characters just work with each other. They look so naturally posed together. I think they did an absolutely fantastic job with this sculpt and design. Alright, so as I mentioned in my recent Hawkman preview, it's pretty difficult to judge a paint job on a pre-production sample because this isn't what the final product is going to look like. But what really stands out to me about this paint job is, again, the contrast between the two characters. I mean, you look at Superboy, he's got these grimy old high tops and this faded pair of jeans. I mean, he looks like a good old-fashioned farm boy. And you compare that to Robin with his sleek metallic green and red outfit, all trimmed in gold. I mean, the two characters just couldn't look more different, which is exactly how they should look. And, with this paint job here, there's nothing that really jumps out at me that might be particularly difficult to do in the factory. So I would fully expect the final piece to look as good or better than this one here in front of me. So as far as paint goes, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think it looks pretty good. Alright, so moving on to production and build quality, and again, there's not a lot I can tell you because this statue is a pre-production sample and has not been engineered yet. It's definitely not what we're going to get as a final product. This sample here, there's no magnets or anything. All the parts are kind of leaned up against each other, almost like a house of cards. So definitely we're going to get something a little bit more refined than this. One thing I got to point out is that this sample only came with one Batarang. The final piece will have a Batarang for each hand of Robin, so don't worry about that if that's something you picked up on earlier in the video. Again, similar to the paint job, there's nothing on this piece here that's really alarming me, like, oh my god, are they going to be able to pull this off in production? I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty routine production for XM. So if this is a statue you have your eye on, I wouldn't be too concerned because barring a major screw up, this statue I think is going to turn out looking great. Alright, it's time to wrap up this preview. The XM Studios Super Sons, of course, forming part of their 1/6 scale DC Rebirth line, and I mentioned off the top my personal feelings towards Robin, but I have to say that my feelings towards this statue overall are pretty good. I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. Part of that is some wistful nostalgia on my part. I mentioned I have two young boys, and my oldest spent about 6 months of his life in a Superman costume about just like this one, and this action scene looks like a regular weekday afternoon of days gone by in my household. Now, that said, is this a statue that I'm looking to pick up? No, absolutely not, because I still hate Robin's guts, even though I will admit that Damian is much more of a badass than Burt Ward ever was in the 60s. Now, that said, I can honestly say if you're either collecting the Rebirth line or you're just a big fan of these two characters, then it's really a no-brainer. This statue has a lot to offer. I mentioned the synergy between the two characters. I love how their poses kind of work so nicely together. I mentioned the contrast, not only in the sculpt, but also the paint job that really shows off that difference in the down-home look of Jonathan Kent versus that sleek and stylish look of Robin. So there you have it. That's the preview of the XM Studios Super Sons. You can pick the statue up direct from XM or from any of their authorized retailers worldwide. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like it, make sure to subscribe, and stay tuned for more reviews in the future. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll talk to you guys soon.